Yeah, I was particularly interested in two aspects that I felt were somewhat underappreciated in looking at the movie. One is that, this is a movie that is about an era in television news, and it's clearly a comedy and clearly an over-the-top comedy, but also is kind of interested in showing some of the ways in which television news is not news. And I think maybe it's a little bit easier to see it after looking at McKay's later work, after seeing Anchorman 2, which also is a very raucous comedy, but it's much more explicit about its critique of cable news and sort of the dawn of cable news. But, I think it's notable that in this movie, Ron Burgundy is like this enormous star, and we never really understand why. He's not particularly good at reporting the news. He's not particularly good at reading the news. People just love him anyway. And I ended up coming across a great book called The Newscasters by Ron Powers, which is all about 1970s television news and describing some of the ways in which what previously had been a somewhat more hard-hitting field of news had become overrun by what he calls happy talk, which is exactly what we picture when we think about local news and talking about people's golf games and barbecues and banter between the various hosts. And, the weatherman performs for like 5 minutes and makes a whole bunch of jokes as they tell you what it's going to be like on Saturday, that this is all sort of a product of the era. And I think what we're seeing here, what we see in Anchorman is a kind of actual depiction of that, where the news has just been hollowed out and replaced by non-news news. So that was really fascinating to me. And then kind of in conjunction with that, I was interested in exploring some of the ways in which Anchorman is a kind of shadow biopic of Jessica Savitch, right? That Jessica Savitch, her story is the thing that kicks off the creation of Anchorman. And we sort of see a lot of her in Veronica Corningstone and in telling these stories about the just overwhelming misogyny of television news in that era and how women are treated. And again, Anchorman is a comedy. It's very deliberately a comedy. It's not a biopic. It's not a drama, but it is pretty intent on depicting in its own way some of the intense difficulties that were experienced by female news pioneers like Savitch. And I think Veronica Corningstone is a kind of version of Savitch or some of those other groundbreaking newscasters.